Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Matt, and if you're new here, consider sticking around a little because we're going to be diving into some pretty good conversation today about what worship actually is. And if this is your first time here or you've already been here before and you haven't subscribed, then what are you guys doing? No, but in all seriousness, consider subscribing. I recently just recorded a video of me doing a cover of the song Alleluia by Jesus Culture, and I will be releasing that shortly. So you definitely do not want to miss that. So consider subscribing, hit the bell so that you guys know when I'm uploading. But without further ado, let's dive into the video. So if we're going to talk about worship, then we have to dive into the word. So why don't you guys join me in Romans chapter 12, verse 1. And it says, "Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship." Amen. Paul starts off this verse by urging us. He's not even asking us. He's essentially telling us that we have to do this. So he's telling us that we have to give ourselves up as a living sacrifice. And in doing so, we worship God. That is our way of worshiping God. So right off the bat, Paul gives us a clear explanation of what worship is. And why is it that we sacrifice ourselves as a sacrifice to God? Well, Paul says that it's by the mercies of God. And so you may be asking yourself, what are the mercies of God? And in simple terms, the mercies of God really refers to anything that God has given us out of his mercy. So what does that really entail? Well, if you think about it, everything, because we're not deserving of anything. See, everything that we have is given to us by God's grace and by God's mercy. And for that reason, Paul is telling us that we should give ourselves as a sacrifice to God. And with that, I want to pose you guys a question. Say you find yourself in a debt, and it's a debt that you can't even pay off, regardless of how much you work, regardless of the hours you put in, you're never going to be able to pay it off. And so you have this debt to somebody, but then your friend comes along and he says, "Don't worry about it. I'll take it upon myself and I'll pay the debt for you." And what he does is he pays it off completely. And you're left with not even a penny in debt to that person. So with that in mind, how grateful would you be to your friend for paying off that debt to you? Because if it were me, I would do anything for that person. Like, I don't even know what I would do to be able to repay that person for the help that they did for me. And so going back to the example that I gave about your friend paying off your debt, how grateful would you be to that person? Because if they paid off a debt like that and got you out of so much trouble, I personally would be so grateful to that person that I don't even know how I would be able to repay them. What do you even do? I would just give everything that I had to that person. And even then, that wouldn't be enough. And that's exactly what Paul is telling us. Because God had been so good to us and God sacrificed so much for us out of his mercy that we should just give ourselves as a sacrifice to him. And so don't get me wrong, when I say give yourself as a sacrifice, I don't mean that you have to take your life for God. What I'm saying is that you should live a life dedicated to God, doing things for God. See, like the example that I gave before, if my friend paid off the debt that I owed, I would just give him everything that I had, and I would essentially make myself his servant. Anything that he needed, I would do for him without a doubt in my mind. And so that's exactly how we should be with Christ. We should be his servants. We should give ourselves to him willingly. It's not that he's asking us to, but because of how good he's been to us and out of his mercy, we should do something to repay God and to thank him for all that he did for us. And so at the very end of the verse, Paul is telling us that when we give ourselves as a sacrifice to God, that is us worshiping God. And so you may be confused a little because just like me, I thought all my life that worship was the first thing that you did at every service, where you sing a couple of songs and then after that you go into the preaching. And I thought that that first bit when we were singing those songs was our worship, which in a sense it is. But what it really is praise. When you look at the Old Testament and you read about David, you would see that he would praise God with his dance and with his singing. And that's exactly what we do. When we sing, that's not us worshiping God, that's us praising God. Now, don't get me wrong, praise is a form of worship, but one thing that my pastor brought up to me, Pastor Gabe, is that praise is a form of worship, but not all worship is praise. And one super important thing that we have to understand is that worship is not an emotion. Now, you may be somebody that maybe doesn't go to church, that maybe isn't a Christian, and you see people singing and praising God and dancing for God, and you may think that it's an act of emotion. No, it's really not. See, like the example that I gave before, it's us giving gratitude for something that we didn't even ask for, but something that we really needed. And because of that, we just want to give our thanks and we want to praise the God that took us out of our debt. That's what it really is about. It's not about us feeling something and then just going off of that feeling. Because worship requires a sacrifice. Just like the verse that we just read, Paul is telling us that we need to sacrifice ourselves for God. And in doing so, that is our worship. When you give up certain things and you choose other things for God, that's a sacrifice right there. When you're choosing to not be on your phone scrolling on TikTok for 3 hours a day, but you choose to take that time to read your word, to spend time with God, that's a sacrifice right there. And when you do that, that's you worshiping God. You're choosing to put aside your own desires and you're choosing to put God first. And what's really important is the position of your heart, because it's like when you give a gift to somebody. If I give somebody a gift, but my facial expression doesn't really show that I want to give it to them, they're not very accepting of wanting to receive the gift. But if I go to the person and I have a smile on my face and I'm all giddy about giving them this gift, then it may not be the greatest gift, but they definitely appreciate it a lot more than if I got them a super expensive gift, but I was very petty about giving it to them. And that's how God is with us. God doesn't want your time just because he wants your time. He wants your time because he wants to get to know you more. He wants to have a relationship with you, and he wants to have a deeper relationship with you. Because yeah, I can read my Bible for 3 hours rather than being on my phone. But if that time is spent with me just going, oh, I could be doing something so much better than sitting down and reading my Bible, then it's not very pleasing to God when we do that, rather than when we go into his word with a desire to want to know him more and to have a deeper relationship with him. But don't get me wrong, there are obviously times that we don't want to do certain things, but we force ourselves to do it because we know it's for our better. You don't want to go to the gym all the time, but you kind of force yourself because you want to reach that goal, you want to lose that weight. But you know, if that you just went to the gym every time that you felt it, you would never lose that weight or get that muscle that you wanted. So it's about sacrifice and, more importantly, how our hearts are positioned with God. And so now the question becomes, how do we deepen our worship? Well, Paul says in the beginning of the verse that we just read that it's by the mercies of God in which we give ourselves as a sacrifice, which in turn is our worship. So if our worship is based off God's mercies and what he's done for us, then we have to understand, first of all, what it is that God did for us. You don't go up to somebody and thank them for something that they never did. Or you can't truly appreciate somebody if you don't understand the severity of what it is that they did for you. Because if I were to ask my friend to pick me up, to, let's say, take me to church, and they were to do that, obviously I would be grateful for what they did. But if I understood that they were struggling financially and they were living off paycheck to paycheck, and them coming to pick me up and drive me to church was a lot for them, but they still did it. That brings it to a different level because I understand the severity of what it is that they did for me and how much they're sacrificing for me. And that's exactly the same thing with God, because you may hear about him giving up his son for us, but if you don't understand the severity of what that really means, then you kind of just brush it off and you're like, oh, I appreciate it, but do you really understand what it is that he did for you? Because if you read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you read about everything that Jesus went through and the suffering that he went through for us, then that brings it to a whole different level, and you become a lot more grateful for what he did. And in turn, you just want to give so much more to God. And that's how we deepen our worship, is by understanding how much he's done for us and how much he's sacrificed for us. And this is something that I shared with in the previous video, which if you haven't seen, definitely go check it out. But I talked about my dad, where I was at work one day and I just started casually thinking about him and everything that he did for me. And when I was thinking about all that he sacrificed for me and all that he does for me, it almost convicted me to go ahead and do something for him. And so what I did was I took him out to eat to this nice sushi place, and he didn't really expect it, and it was kind of just out of the blue, but it was just something that really came out of my heart, that I just wanted to show my appreciation for him, but he never asked me to do it. And that's the same thing with God, is that he never asks you to give yourself up to him or to do anything for him, but it should just be something that comes out of you because you just want to show your appreciation and you just want to show how grateful you are to God for what he's done for you. And that's why Paul urges us to sacrifice ourselves to God, because it's what he deserves. And you may be thinking to yourself right now that maybe you haven't really shown God the appreciation that he deserves, and it's okay. Take time out of your day today, or even right now, wherever you are, just stop what you're doing and just thank God. You don't need music to be playing in the background, or you don't need to start singing a song, but just start thanking God and think about everything that he's done for you. Think about everything that he's sacrificed for you and everything that he's just done for you just today. Really, you woke up, you have breath in your lungs, you're healthy, you have family and friends that care about you. I think that's something that we should give thanks to God for, and that we should really show our appreciation to him for. You can just talk to him in this moment right now, and you can just thank him and just tell him how amazing he is. Talk to him about how loving, how kind he is, how merciful he's been over your life. And let's all strive to deepen our worship by reading our Bibles, by understanding what it is that God is doing for us, what God has already done for us, and what God will continue to do in our lives. And so with that, guys, we've come to the end of the video, but that doesn't mean that we've come to the end of your worship. We still have a lot more growing to do, all of us as Christians, and we could all strive to do better. So let's make that our effort. But with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. Comment down below your thoughts on worship, whether you agree or disagree with me, or any points that you may want to add. Make sure to like the video, subscribe. I am uploading very shortly, and I'm excited for the videos that are going to come out. But I hope you all have an amazing day. God bless you all, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.